What's going on, everyone? So, welcome to my latest live stream. This one, I'm of course doing solo. I know usually you guys see me do my collective videos with Sergey and Marv, but this is a video I've been trying to do for at this point over a month, which is a catch-up video. All the movies that I watched in January of 2026. For a little bit of context, on my YouTube channel, 2015 and 2016, I made sure to review pretty much all the new movies that I had seen. And then 2017, I had a little bit of a break at the beginning of that year, and then I was just reviewing movies nonstop from 2017 to 2020. And then 2021, I was still doing some reviews and everything. And then 2022, I also was. But then by 2023, I was doing like catch-up videos. And then 2024 and 2025, I was really only reviewing movies that I had the urge to review. So I'm going to try to get back to the catch-up videos, but this time using Letterboxd as like a visual gag. And not only just talking about the new movies that I saw from 2026, but also just anything in general. And of course, I want some interaction in the comment section. I'll keep things spoiler free, but if you guys want to talk about certain movies that you see that I've watched, we can of course do that. But we're going to start from January 1st, and then we're going to go to January 31st, and then of course, if you guys want to discuss anything else, we can do so. But I started off the year watching a couple first timers. The first one was Shark Tale. Shockingly, I did not grow up watching Shark Tale. I actually was not allowed to watch it. And it's one of those movies that I would see occasionally at the dentist's office many decades ago. And after finally watching it, I thought it was all right. I felt kind of mixed about it. Martin Scorsese, I thought, was the best part of that movie. I thought he was hilarious. The fact that they were able to get him to do that movie was really good. But yeah, it's a middle of the road movie, but I could see why it has a following. But it's kind of wild it was nominated for Best Animated Feature at the time. Next up, we have Megan 2, which is a very self-aware movie. I can't say I was necessarily a fan of it, but I didn't hate it the way that some people do. It was just there. It existed. It was a good background movie. I watched it while I was on the treadmill, and I really don't have that much recollection of the movie other than while I was watching it on the treadmill. I was like, it's not bad. I'm glad I waited to watch it on Blu-ray at the library. Glad I did not watch this in theaters because I would have been as invested. And then I got One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for Christmas. Shout out to my wife. Came with the slipcover, which if you're a physical media collector, you know it. It's always awesome to get that. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is one of my favorite films of all time. So the fact that I got to experience this on 4K was amazing. I've seen it on DVD. I saw it on Blu-ray, and then of course now on 4K, and it's looked the best on 4K. Beamer Bro 1781 is in the chat. One for the Cuckoo's Nest and Chinatown. Yes, that was an amazing doubleheader. I was actually just about to mention Chinatown was what I watched next with One for the Cuckoo's Nest, and it was amazing. I mean, it's also one of my favorite films of all time, but it looked really, really good. And I was a fan of the Blu-ray transfer, so the fact that the 4K transfer looked as great as it did was something that I was definitely glad that I upgraded. Next up, we have Once Upon a Time in the West, which is another film that I love. It's an all-timer. It's my number 2 in terms of Westerns of all time. I think it's a masterpiece. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is my favorite mainstream Western, but if people want to watch like an art house Western, I use Once Upon a Time in the West as like my go-to of, hey, you should probably check this film out. But that was the film that started my Saturday binge, because next up I watched Amadeus, or rewatched, I should say. And Amadeus is another film that you're going to hear this, quite a bit. It's another one of my favorite films of all time. And the thing is with Amadeus is that I've seen the director's cut, I've seen the theatrical cut, and the last couple times I had seen it was the director's cut, but the 4K only has the theatrical cut. And I have to say, I do think that the theatrical cut is the better version of the director's cut, but you can't go wrong with either version. But if you're on the fence about upgrading, I would say do so because it does look really, really good. This is alongside Barry Lyndon in regards to like one of the most beautiful period pieces that you'll probably ever watch. It's a fantastic looking film. And then right after Amadeus, I watched Jacob's Ladder, or I should say rewatched. And Jacob's Ladder, and I mentioned this in my review. So I had seen it 8+ years ago, and I thought it was just okay. It's one of those films that's considered one of the best mind benders, but after finally rewatching the film, I can definitely see why it's considered that. And I do have to say, rewatching it in an elevated state is the way to go because the film constantly makes you go back and forth between the lead character, feeling as if he's going insane or has PTSD or a merge of the two. And it's really good in regards to making yourself feel as if you're in the lead character's mindset. Also, the last like 10 minutes is genuinely unsettling, and I mean that in the best of ways. Tim Robbins is fantastic in this film. Again, shout out to my friend Ryan Arcavage. He let me borrow his 4K, and I do think that I will pick this up on 4K because it's a great looking film. Next up, we have Children of Men, which Children of Men, I'm going to give a shout out to one of my friends, Louis. He said that it's one of the best films that he's ever watched on a candy, and that it literally changed his life. And I was the one that recommended it to him, so I was like, you know what, I'll watch it that way. And yeah, it's a fantastic experience that way. It's very emotional. The fact that this film manages to combine all these different genres and all these different emotions, and also manage to have so many different long takes that are very elaborate, especially like the action set piece at the end. Genuinely a transfixing experience, and it's aged incredibly well. It's turning 20 this year. I hope that it does get a 4K release and maybe a theatrical release, because if it does, I definitely want to be there to experience it on the big screen, because it's a one of a kind film. If you've been sleeping on Children of Men, what are you doing? It's a great film to rewatch. But I mentioned this in other reviews, and you're probably catching on. Usually, the beginning of every year, I do a lot of rewatches of like my favorites. I'll either upgrade certain stuff, or I'll just pull certain movies out of my collection because I want to rewatch certain films after binging a bunch of films that are new for the past couple months to catch up for the award season. So you'll definitely pick up on that. After Children of Men, I rewatched The Social Network, which The Social Network was a film that, of course, it's in my top 25. It's in my top 10. I always said to myself, the Blu-ray looks fantastic. I don't think I'll upgrade to the 4K because why would I do that, considering that it's going to be an upscale? It's not a true 4K transfer, because the original was a 2K, so it was an upscale. But yeah, so this is technically the unrated cut. I found out through another Letterboxd user that the 4K has the unrated cut, and it's really just one word. And I'll explain this, of course, in this review right here. It's pretty funny. It's funny how the MPA works because, again, one word literally changes the rating of this. But I will say, if you're on the fence, upgrade to 4K because it does look really good. And also, it's a Dolby Atmos mix, so it sounds really good too. And the film is all about, of course, a berating of dialogue and a constant barrage of it. So it's definitely worth upgrading. We got a couple comments. Bro 171 says, I'm due for a Social Network rewatch. Yeah, man, you definitely should. It's fantastic. Honestly, I think now's the time to do it because David Fincher is going to have a new film coming out this year. So I would do that. And then I would also rewatch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because he's doing the sequel to that. So it's going to be interesting. Tryson is in the house, aka Andrew. Good to hear from you, man. He says, hi, Chad. Been some time since I last joined a live stream of yours. This is a new approach. Yes, I'm going to try to do a live stream once every month where I go over all the movies that I watched, either that month or slightly after. So, like, for example, February is pretty close to being over. So I might do my everything I watched in February of 2026 a little bit after February, so like the beginning of March, or I might wait a little bit longer. We'll see. But I just figured it was a fun way to go over, some of the movies that I watched in this time frame, especially since it's a mix of rewatches and first times, and also, might get some insight from you guys as to your thoughts on certain of these movies. But yeah, so Social Network, 5 out of 5, masterpiece. Love it. Next up, I watched the SpongeBob movie Search for SquarePants, which this was this was my venture into SpongeBob. I wasn't allowed to watch SpongeBob growing up, so I unfortunately hadn't seen any episodes prior to this movie. But I watched this with my wife, her sister, and then her wife, and we all had a blast watching this movie. Like, it was only 88 minutes long, I think, but it was very entertaining. I mean, it's a very trippy, surreal film, which I was kind of expecting, but not to this extent. And it was one of those things where I found myself very much so shocked that this was a children's film because there was a lot of adult humor in it, but I just had a really good time. I had a 5 out of 5 star experience, but the movie itself I thought was just all right. Like, it's a 3 out of 5. But again, I will be rewatching this film in the future. I might pick this up on Blu-ray because, like I said, I had such a good time with this movie. But again, I acknowledge it is not a perfect movie. That's why I gave it a 3 out of 5. Next up, some of you I'm sure are aware, I rewatched Casino Royale, and the reason for this was because of the live stream with Sergey and Marv, because that was in our top 100 collective list. And I really liked Casino Royale. I thought that it was really good. It holds up well. My rating did go down a little bit, mostly just because of some of the pacing, but it is a good film. I will say, regarding with how I watched it, which was in an elevated state, wouldn't really recommend it. I think that it didn't really do much, honestly, for this type of movie. But that being said, the next movie that I watched in that franchise definitely was awesome to watch that way, which was, of course, Skyfall. I know everyone has a different opinion, but Skyfall is hands down my favorite James Bond film. I just think with what everyone, both in front of and behind the camera, was able to pull off was really something amazing. It's a film that changed me as a 16-year-old, and watching this as a 29-year-old about to be 30, it still hits, and if not even more. Sure, some people could argue that it's like the British Dark Knight, but a film done this artfully, that's also a huge blockbuster. Give us more of films like Skyfall. Give us films that are, an action film that's shot by Roger Deakins and, has a score by Thomas Newman. Like, this is the stuff that I love, man. I love Skyfall. It's so good. And my wife also isn't a big fan of action films, and she liked it. So just wanted to throw that out there as well. So after watching Casino Royale, Skyfall, again, this was a, some of you know, Candy Day. I watched Smiley Face. And Smiley Face, this is a film that I will just say 100%, if you are to watch this, you need to method view it. Meaning you need to be in the mindset of this lead character who is high. That's the only way to watch this movie. If you're going to watch it sober, it's going to feel probably meandering. I've only seen this film once, but I will say watching it in this state of mind was quite the experience. And it's one of my favorite Greg Ariaki films, which I went through his filmography, and you'll see more of that at I think it's the middle of January when I continued on with his filmography. But I think this film is underrated. I can see why it has a cult classic status. It's a lot of fun, and it's also a film that really gave me a lot of respect for Anna Faris, because I feel like up to this point, a lot of her comedies didn't really hit for me. But watching her give this lead performance really made me appreciate her as an actress. And what can I say? I liked this film, and I'll probably add it to my physical media collection. I don't know about the Blu-ray that's out right now, because from what I read on Blu-ray.com, it's kind of a mixed bag. So I might wait until if it gets a 4K release, but we'll see. Andrew says, nice, man. Haven't caught up with you on the side about the number of good movies I finally checked out recently, but will do soon. Nice, man. Yeah, I know you've been busy with, of course, the holiday and everything. So I totally get that. But January, I watched a lot of movies, and I managed to catch up on a lot of short films too that have been on my list. And, we'll get into that in a little bit. I did watch, let's see, which one was this? Oh, I watched, and I'm going to butcher this, Un Chien Andalou, which is a film that it's most famous for this, as you see that shot. It's most famous for that because some people claim that violence is something that really started when the Hays Code was disbanded in the early 1960s, but that's not true. That's a bunch of revisionist history. This 1929 film literally has someone get their eye sliced open. So when people say, "Oh, I miss movies like the old days," it's like, "Oh, you mean like this movie where someone gets their eye, slit?" So if you've seen Only God Forgives, I feel like there's a certain scene in that film that was heavily inspired by this film. But did see this in an elevated state, and it's not bad. I can respect it, but yeah, is what it is. I also watched Meshes of the Afternoon, which is a 1943 film. I'll be honest, what I did was I looked up like surreal films to watch on a candy, and those two and another one were on the list. And this one, I thought was all right. It's one of those films I can see its influence. I can definitely respect it, but I didn't give it a heart because I just thought it was all right. And then to end that night, I watched Dimensions of Dialogue, which, I mean, look at this picture. You can see that this is a Chad movie. Like, it's so bizarre. It's a film that came out in 1983, which is insane to think because it's the Reagan era, Reaganomics and everything. And it's like you have a short film like this. I mean, just look at this. Like, this looks very Lynchian-esque, but it was a good time. I would definitely rewatch it in a heartbeat. I think it was like 15 minutes long or something, but this picture does a disservice of just how weird it gets. It gets really weird. But if you are in the mood for a surreal short film, look no further. This is the one to check out. And then let's see. I mentioned Greg Ariaki. I watched Kaboom, which I thought was okay. I really liked some of the ideas that were focused. Greg Ariaki's directing is solid, but it really didn't do much for me. I watched it. I thought it was okay in the moment, but I just didn't really have too much to say about it. Then it was just an accident. I watched later on that day. I actually showed it to my wife because at that time I thought it was going to get a Best Picture nomination. I was shocked when it didn't get a Best Picture nomination. I'll just say that. But I showed it to her. I hadn't seen it, and we both really liked it. We both saw that it was a very important film that everyone should watch. So the fact that F1, which for the record, I really enjoy F1, the fact that that film got in the top 10 and it was just an accident is just very sad. This is a really good film. It feels very much so like a Denis Villeneuve pick, specifically like Incendies and Prisoners. And I mean that in the best way possible. So if you've been sleeping on It Was Just an Accident, please do check it out because it's a great film. I was so close to giving it a 4.5 out of 5, but I was like, just save it for the rewatch. But I gave it a 4.25. Then I watched another Greg Ariaki film, which was Splendor, and I thought it was okay. I can see why it has a cult classic status, but it unfortunately didn't do too much for me. But again, I see why there's a lot of people that are fans of it. By the way, with the comments, Andrew says Cuckoo's Nest, Chinatown, and Once Upon a Time in the West, or some I've yet to see, but Amadeus, Children of Men, and Social Network are goated. Oh yeah, dude, I would say definitely do like a Jack Nicholson binge watch. One for the Cuckoo's Nest and Chinatown are fantastic. Cuckoo's Nest is in my top 25, and then same with Once Upon a Time in the West, and then Chinatown is right outside my top 25. It's amazing. And then Andrew also says, and yeah, I agree. Skyfall is my favorite James Bond film too. Yeah, I know some people give Casino Royale that, and I can definitely see why, but I think that as really good as Casino Royale is, I do think that Skyfall takes some of the themes that Casino Royale tackles. I just think it does it so much better, especially with the whole, almost trying to outgrow the ideas that the Sean Connery movies really were tackling. And I feel like Casino Royale stripped those away, and I feel like Skyfall stripped them away even further. So, but yeah. So next up after Splendor, I watched Frankenstein. And Frankenstein is directed by Guillermo del Toro. This was another film that I showed my wife because I was pretty certain that it was going to get a Best Picture nomination. In this case, as it turns out, I was right. She really liked it. I loved it. It hit just as well as it did on first viewing. I was fortunate enough to see it in theaters in October of 2025. Seeing it on Netflix definitely gave me a feeling of, come on, let's get that physical media copy out. Come on, Criterion, bring it out. Because on Netflix, man, you can really tell that things are super compressed. And again, it looked really good, but in the back of my mind was like, I know that this looked a lot better on the big screen. So fingers crossed, hope that physical media copy comes out soon. After Frankenstein, I saw All About Lily Choo Choo. I Apologize if I mispronounced that. This was a movie that I watched because I'm trying to go through Letterboxd's top 250 of certain lists, and this was one that I believe it was on the most fans list, and then also not IMDb's Letterboxd's top 250, just in general. So I watched it, and I thought it was okay. I can see the appeal. I thought that the editing style, the narration were definitely things that felt unique, and why I think that a lot of people are fans of it. Maybe I was just in the wrong headspace. Maybe it was the fact that I was watching a 2.5 hour film with a bunch of ads, so it ended up being like a 3.5 hour film. But I know that I need to rewatch this film at some point. I think that it will hit even harder once I, give it a second chance. And as I always say on this channel, I think the power of rewatch can definitely be felt with films like this, where they are experimental, but then also if you weren't in the necessarily right headspace while watching it, might be as well. And just as I explained, watching films on like Plex and Tubi can be kind of a detriment in some cases, because when you have a bunch of commercials that break the flow of the pacing and everything, it can kind of take you out and unfortunately just make it not as an immersive experience as you might want. So that was the case with All About Lily Choo Choo. Next up, I watched Central Station, another film I watched because it was on Letterboxd's top 250, and I liked this one. I don't like it as much as a lot of other people do, but I can definitely see with what it did for Brazilian cinema. I thought that it was very well crafted, very well acted. I thought the themes were solid, and it's a well put together film. Will I rewatch it? I don't necessarily know, but I definitely would say it's worth your time. It's good. I'm looking forward to watching The Secret Agent, which is another Brazilian film. So that should be occurring soon, hopefully. Next up, I watched the Shaun the Sheep movie. I watched this with some friends, and they hadn't seen Shaun the Sheep, the show. They hadn't seen Wallace and Gromit, from what I understand. So this was their venture into this world, and they all really liked it. I watched it with 3 friends. They all really liked it, and it's one of my favorite animated films, so I, of course, naturally loved it as well. I love the visual storytelling. I love the fact that these characters are just, so animated, if you will. They're so entertaining to, experience their adventures and mishaps, and I love the movie references in this film, from the, Night of the Hunter reference to the Taxi Driver reference. Just a lot of funny movie references that I just couldn't help but appreciate. After we watched that, my one friend went home, and then the other 2 friends, I was like, "You guys want to see something crazy?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure." And I showed them the short film Broom Shakalaka, which, if you have not seen, please look this up on YouTube, or look it up on, I think it was on HBO Max for a little bit. Look this up with no context, and you are going to be in for quite a ride. It's only like 10 minutes long, but it's hilarious. I remember watching this for the first time last year, and I was like, which director did this? I need to know. And as it turns out, it was the Daniel brothers. It was before they were famous. It was before Swiss Army Man. It was before Everything Ever All at Once. But you watch this short film, and you can definitely say, okay, I see why they got the gig for Swiss Army Man. I see why they got the gig for Everything Ever All at Once. It's quite an original experience, and the humor is right on my alley. Next up, I watched No Other Choice. I am a huge Park Chan-wook fan, and full disclosure, this was my number 1 most anticipated film of 2025. I told all of my friends, I'm not doing my top 10 films of 2025 list until I see this film. And I will say this, and it's the second Park Chan-wook film where this happens. There was a one-day showing in IMAX, I might add, on December 8th of 2025. I unfortunately couldn't make it because I was on a cruise, and I missed that. And I was like, oh, well, maybe it'll come out at the very end of December. No, it didn't. It actually went wide completely, like at the theater I normally go to. I think it was towards the end of January. I was fortunate enough to where I went to New Jersey, and I got to see this on January 10th, as you saw. And I, went with a friend who had never seen a Park Chan-wook film. He really liked this. I loved it. I thought this was fantastic. One of my favorite films of the year. I think it's everything that I like in a Park Chan-wook film and more. I think that its critique of AI, capitalism, just the dream life in particular, and then also just what it's like to be, a family person, and all the balancing act that goes into that. It's all very fascinating, and the cinematography and the editing are just insane. Love the acting. I think the ending really hits hard, and yeah, it's again such a good film. Uh, Andrew says, "Oh man, Shaun the Sheep TV series was a great part of my childhood. The opening theme whistling will live rent free in my mind for the rest of my life." Yes. Oh, it's such a great theme, man. I finally watched the TV show last year. I bought it on Blu-ray, and I like the show quite a bit. I think the fact that it's 5 to 6 minutes long of just like a mishap that went on in their life, it's interesting. It's very interesting, and I really like the movie. I think the Farmageddon movie is quite good as well, but I just haven't pulled the trigger to buy it on Blu-ray just yet. But the Shaun the Sheep movie, I had to buy that right away because I knew immediately it was going to be one of my favorite animated films. After No Other Choice, we have. I know I'm going to mispronounce this. I had, man, Yi. I think it's pronounced. You guys can correct me in the comment section if I pronounced it wrong, which I'm assuming I did. This is one that's been on my watch list for a very long time. A very long time. And similar to some of these other films that I mentioned, I watched this for the first time because I saw it was on Letterboxd's top 250 and a couple other lists on there. And I thought it was okay. I wasn't a big fan of it. I didn't hate it by any means. I think it is in some manners it is an interesting coming of age story. And I do think that is very well shot. I think that this is a director that I appreciate the fact that he is unabashed with how he depicts things. And it feels very organic. But again, I just thought it was okay as a whole. I did think it was a little bit too long, but I can definitely see why this is a film that's beloved by many people. And yeah, again, I didn't have much to say about it. That's why I didn't review it on Letterboxd. But the next day I watched Resurrection. This was a film that I've quickly realized the last year or two that there are certain films that are just so indie that they probably will not make your local AMC or Regal theater. So I went out of my way and I went to Philly to see Resurrection on the big screen with a friend. We both loved this film. This was a film that immediately I knew was going to be my top 10, and I was glad that I waited to do my top 10 list to watch this film. I think it's an amazing film. If you love film as an art form, if you believe in visual storytelling, if you believe in original filmmaking, if you believe in the power of cinema, this is the film to watch. Again, it's not necessarily going to be for everyone because it is a film that is a slow burn. I was captivated throughout the entire film, though, and it did have one of my favorite endings of 2025. It is getting a Criterion release, I want to say in April. I will be picking this up in July for that haul. It's a film I already want to rewatch. So if you've been sleeping on this film the way many people have, I highly recommend you watch Resurrection because it's a fantastic film. Great theater experience. It was surprisingly packed too. Later on that day, I watched The Last Detail. And I'll just say this. The Last Detail I watched specifically because it's a Jack Nicholson film that he got nominated for, I think it was Best Leading Actor. But I was like, okay, I need to finally watch this movie. And I liked it. My dad was actually in the Navy, so it was very fascinating to see a slice of life film that focuses on something that was a part of his life. I liked The Last Detail, though. I thought it was rock solid. I really liked the acting. It's a very well put together film. Didn't love it per se, but it could be a Five Easy Pieces situation, which is another Jack Nicholson film where I rewatch it and I end up loving it. So we'll see if that's going to be the case, though. Andrew says Justice for Park Chan-wook, 0 Oscar nominations for his most accessible film is a crime. Yeah, I was surprised that it didn't even get a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination. I think it definitely should have gotten the Best Editing nomination, Best International Feature. I mean, that was something I thought was a lock. So I was shocked when it didn't. But it is what it is. I guess the Academy just isn't a fan of him. Next up, I watched Whimsical Illusions. I did a binge of 1890s to early 1900s films. Whimsical Illusions is directed by what's his name? I I'm going to get shot for not knowing it. Georges Melius. I hope I pronounced that correctly. If I didn't, I apologize. I did a mini binge of like a bunch of his films because I was planning to rewatch Hugo. Hugo is, of course, about this individual and showcases a lot of his films. So I was like, you know what? I should watch all of his films, or not all of them, but a lot of them, so that way I can have some context. And I'll say this, I was glad that I did that because not only did I end up appreciating Hugo even more, but it was really cool to see this type of filmmaking that, doing a binge of, you especially get like an idea on how film as an art form has changed over time. I also watched another one of his films. It was called The Hilarious Posters, which that was something. I liked it. It came out in 1906. Then I watched Boxing Match, which is an 1894 film. That's right. It's only like a minute long, but I couldn't really rate it because I'm like, it's literally only a minute long. So I just gave it a heart because I appreciated with what it did as the art form. But similar to Dixon experimental sound film, that came out in 1894. And as I said, it's incredibly important to film history. It's one of the first that we saw. So, I mean, it's definitely earned its place. It's also just crazy that the art form started, pre-1900s. So I definitely respected that. I also watched another film that was greatly influential, and that's Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory, which it's all in the title. That's literally what it is. It's a minute of someone just leaving a factory. So again, some of these short films, it was hard to rate because I'm like, it's just people leaving a factory, 30 seconds to a minute of that. How can I rate that? Then I watched The Kiss, which came out in 1896. And similarly, I wasn't sure how to rate it, but I did like it. So there's that. All right, let me go back. All right. Then I watched, same day, The Arrival of a Train at La Ciotat. Again, I probably butchered that. I apologize. It's a minute long. Train coming in the station is what it is. I also then watched The Famous Box Trick. Came out in 1898. I thought it was solid. 1901 film, I watched The Man with the Rubber Head. I liked it. I liked it quite a bit, actually. The Brahmin and the Butterfly, 1901 film. I liked it. The Infernal Cakewalk, 1903 film. Again, a lot of these I watched because of getting ready for Hugo. I then watched The Melomaniac, which I wasn't a big fan of, but I was a fan enough to where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to give it that heart. But I thought it was mixed. I can't really say middle of the road, but then I watched The Damnation of Faust, 1898 film. Similarly, it's not that long. I think it was like a minute or two. But again, another film that's important for the film history, but wasn't a big fan of. But I liked it enough. Then I watched The Untamable Whiskers, 1904 film. Similar to The Melomaniac, I felt it was a mixed bag, but I still appreciated with what it did for the art form. Then I watched The Lily Putin Minute. Again, some of these titles are really testing with my ability to speak. That I liked. Now coming out of the silent film era, we go to 82 years later. I finally watched Ironweed. Similar to Last Detail, the reason why I watched it was because it was a Jack Nicholson film that got him an Oscar nomination. So I believe it was after this film. I can now say that I've seen all of Jack Nicholson's films that he was nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role or Supporting Role. And I wasn't a fan of Ironweed. I wasn't. I thought that it was well acted, and I do think its heart is in the right place with what the story is being depicted. But the overall approach is very bland. I mean, the pacing, the length, very much so a chore to get through, which it shouldn't be because it's a movie that stars Jack Nicholson and Meryl Streep. It should be very investing, but the filmmaking it's not really that interesting. What you see is what you get. After Ironweed, I watched Roundhay Garden Scene, which came out in 1888, another very important film for what we saw in cinema. Then we saw Sally Gardner at a Gallop, 1878. Now, you've probably seen this shot in two films. The first one that you probably saw was, of course, Nope, and then Babylon. And I believe they came out in the same year, which makes it all the more interesting. But that shot is famous because it's one of the first shots that we saw in cinema. So it's, again, I think 30 seconds to a minute long. So that's why I didn't really know how to rate it. But yeah, something from 1878. Next up, I watched Ali Babi and the 40 Thieves, 1902. I liked it. Very colorful, very engaging. Um, Not amazing, but I liked it. Andrew says, so has your vision regained its ability to see color after you finished your turn of the century black and white silent film marathon? Well, that's the thing. George's Méliès, his films weren't 100% black and white. In fact, he would tint the film so that way there was color in his films. So it was really the films that came out pre 1900 where it was like 100% black and white. So a lot of his films do have color, which is interesting. But you can tell that it was colored on, but still fascinating. But it was very interesting going back and forth between films that came out 100 years before the ones that you're watching currently. So, but it helps me. I feel like film history is important. I feel like watching these type of films gives you even more appreciation with where we are today, for me at least. After 1902, I watched The Kingdom of the Fairies. I liked this one. Came out in 1903. Then I watched The Great Train Robbery, which is a very famous film, very influential as well. I liked it. Didn't love it, but I liked it. Then I watched The Merry Frolics of Satan, which came out in 1906. I also just realized I forgot to tell you guys, I wasn't binge watching all these short films specifically because of Hugo. It was also because of Babylon. I was going to do a binge of those two movies, so I wanted to watch all of those because Babylon also showcases at the very end of the film a lot of short films that really paved the way for cinema as we see it today. So I wanted to do that as well. So a film like The Great Train Robbery, I don't think Hugo pays homage to this. I think it was Babylon. So that was why I watched that. And then The Merry Frolics of Satan, same thing. Then I watched The Witch. I thought this was all right, but I liked it enough to give it a heart. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 1907 version. I'm a big fan of the 54 version. That was a film that really influenced me and the type of films I like. So watching the silent film was very fascinating. I can't say I'm a big fan of it, but I liked it enough. Oh, then I watched The Writer, which is a film that is directed by Matthew Kuchum, who is he does a lot of things. He's a writer, he's a filmmaker, and he's also a fellow letterboxer. I would highly recommend everyone, and I mean everyone, check out his short films. They are very much so heavily focused on visual storytelling. He's heavily influenced by like David Lynch. So if you like David Lynch, I would highly recommend you check out his films. The Writer is another good film from him. I've been a fan of his for a while. I've spoken to him off to the side. I really like it. I think he's a really good director. And if you like visual storytelling, I would highly recommend you check out his short films. So there's that. Then I watched An Impossible Balancing Feat, 1902. I really liked this one. The Prince of Magicians, also really liked that one. The Living End, okay, we get into another Greg Araki film. I thought this was solid. I thought that it was a very interesting slice of life traveling type film. You're focusing on these two individuals as they're coming to terms with who they are, but it's also very much so a slice of life journey that these characters are going on. And I thought it was solid. I didn't love it the way some people do. I know it has like a cult following, but I liked it. And that's why it has the heart. That's why it has 3.5. Then I watched that same day The Conquest of the Pole, which I liked. Voice of the Nightingale, 1923. I liked Ballet. I know I'm going to butcher this. Makanook, 1924. Really liked it. Actually, I'm curious with what I had to say about it. Oh yeah, an experimental, surreal, artfully crafted film that clearly influenced David Lynch. Greatly admire the short film and look forward to rewatching in the future. Yeah, I stand by that. Actually, I'll say this: I'll talk about the Alphabet when I do my February, everything I watched in February 2026. But the Alphabet is a short film that David Lynch did prior to Eraserhead, and I would say that that in particular was greatly inspired by this short film. So again, if you like David Lynch, I would watch this. You'll pick up quite quickly that January was definitely a month where I was on a surreal short film and feature length film binge. It was awesome. Then I watched Black and Tan, which was a film that briefly gets shown in the movie Babylon. So I watched it. I wasn't a big fan, but it was all right. The Impossible Voyage, 1904. I liked it. Then I watched in theaters. Again, it's hilarious when you go from a film from 1904 to 2026. I watched on January 15th, 28 years later, The Bone Temple, and I really, really liked The Bone Temple. I thought that it was a very fascinating film. It was a great companion piece to 28 years later, but it also manages to stand on its own and also set up a sequel. And I think that that's what a middle chapter should be able to do. And thankfully, The Bone Temple was up for the task. It was also not what I was expecting going in. I wasn't really expecting much, but I was not expecting there to be scenes that are kind of like a hangout stoner film, if you will. Again, not expecting that. It was not on my bingo card for being in a 28 years later film. But without spoiling anything, you have like those kind of scenes, and then you have some like really gnarly violence that you definitely will not be able to unsee. So it was very fascinating with how I was able to go back and forth. Andrew says, how did you even get access to the ancient movies? Did you break into a tomb to steal them, Nicolas Cage's National Treasure style? No. So a lot of these are either on HBO Max or they're on YouTube. So I was able to watch them that way, fortunately enough. There are unfortunately, certain silent films that have been kind of lost to time, but thankfully, YouTube and other outlets and physical media has been able to preserve them. But yeah, that's how I was able to watch them. After 20 years later, The Bone Temple, I watched the next day White Bird in a Blizzard, which was another Greg Ariaki film. I think that was the final one I needed to watch before being able to say I could rank his work. Oh yeah, I can say I've seen all of his films except for the first and second film, which are unfortunately unavailable due to copyright issues. Will rank his work on my YouTube channel once I see his new film coming out this year called I Want Your Sex. So yeah, this is one of those films that, because I've seen, I can now say I've seen all the director's films. So if you are waiting on this director ranking, it's going to be probably late 2027, because I think I Want Your Sex was picked up at Sundance Film Festival, so it is coming out this year. I just don't know when, and I also know that once I finally watch it, I then have to film my ranking, and there's also other directors that I have set up for coming out next year. So, for example, I'm looking right now, and I just got done editing my Emerald Fennell, like her director ranking list, and that's not coming out until let me see real quick. That's not coming out until May of 2027. So I'm set up for until May of 2027 with director ranking videos. So I would say Greg Ariaki's films, that ranking probably won't come out until the end of 2027. Full disclosure. Then I watched the 17th was a candy day, you know. So I rewatched Babylon, and that was a great experience. That was a really, really good experience. So, like, as you saw, it was a movies about making movies movie night. Number one, I one of the things I love about film as an art form is that it's always changing, it's always adapting, and viewers also are somewhat adaptable. And I will say for myself, I find myself being able to adapt as well. And I remember when I first saw Babylon, both times I watched it, my one critique is that it was very much so similar to Boogie Nights, which is one of my favorite films of all time. But the last couple of years, I've realized that you can you can love a film from the past, but you can also love a film that pays homage to it. Like, it is possible. And that's something that I was able to come to terms with rewatching Babylon. I was like, I love Boogie Nights. It's one of my favorite films. It's in my top 50. Is Babylon in my top 50? No. Is it in my top 250? No. But for what it's going for, I really liked it. And I think it's a very fascinating film. And yeah, I really, really liked it. I also love that I said this. And I honestly watched it in a certain headspace, and I still stand by this though, because I always hear audience members complain, oh, we don't get original movies, and meanwhile they're just watching the same old on Disney Plus, and it's like, yeah, because you're just watching the same old schlock. But then when you get a film like Babylon, where it's done by an auteur director, it's like, no, I'm not gonna watch it, or I'll just wait until it's on streaming, or it got mixed ratings, so mixed ratings means it's not good. Whatever. People are finicky. I love Babylon, though. Next up, as I was mentioning, I watched Hugo. I used the photo of Martin Scorsese's cameo, which, it's funny, the last couple times I watched Hugo, I didn't pick up on his cameo, but watching it in an elevated state of mind, I was like, oh, that's Scorsese. That's an awesome cameo. But I really liked this film. I think that it really grew on me on this viewing. I loved it. I really appreciate it now that I have seen a lot of George Melis's silent films. I was like, okay, I definitely understand with why Scorsese did this film, and he's someone that he restores films off to the side. So I could definitely tell that this was a film that meant a lot to him, and because of his passion, I was able to really appreciate this. But as Hugo said, he said it was like seeing his dreams in the middle of the day. The movies were our special place. And I feel like that line in particular, I've really grown to appreciate, because a filmmaker like David Lynch in particular was really good at taking that idea and just elevating it into film as an art form. And I just think that Scorsese did that with Hugo. I mean, Hugo feels very much so dreamlike with everything that's depicted. He's turning children movie tropes on its head, whilst at the same time simultaneously, somehow, some way, paying homage to film history, and also in turn educating both adults and audience members of this, and like, hey, this is the history of film. So I love Hugo. I think Hugo is great. Not many people seem to talk about this film, unfortunately, but it's a great film. And as I used in terms of one of the tags, I did cry watching this film. It really hit me this time. So I love this film, man. Speaking of David Lynch, I watched or rewatched Mulholland Drive, which is the third entry in my Movies About Making Movies movie night. Ironically enough, I was thinking about David Lynch a couple days prior, and I was like, I think this is pretty close to when David Lynch died a year ago. And sure enough, it was like, oh, this upcoming Saturday is going to be the 1 year, or no, I think it was Friday. It was going to be the 1 year anniversary of when he died. So I was like, okay, I'm going to add this onto the slate of movies about movies. And I'm glad that I did, because Mulholland Drive, it's my favorite film of all time. I think it's an amazing film. It's truly mind-blowing with how it was able to change me as a viewer. Again, there was before Chad, and then there was after Chad with this film. It's a very, very important film to not only myself, but honestly, just 21st century filmmaking. I mean, this is a film that came out 25 years ago. This was my favorite film of that year. It's kind of funny because yesterday, and we'll talk about the irony of this. Yesterday, I watched two films from 2001. I watched Razzie winner Freddie Got Fingered, and then I watched Beautiful Mind, which was won Best Picture in 2001. And I'll talk more about those, of course, in when I do the February everything I watched in January 2026. But watching Mulholland Drive, I'm glad that it got a Best Director nomination, but I stand by this. I think it should have gotten a Best Picture nomination at the very least, and also Best Original Screenplay. I mean, it's extremely well written, and I just think the dreamlike quality of that film gets better and better with each viewing. And I would highly recommend you method view this film. If you're up in the middle of the night, put this film on. You're going to feel as if you're at Club Silencio when that scene hits. I promise you that A couple comments. We have Andrew says, Babylon, Hugo, Mulholland Drive, films I really appreciate but did not like very much. Oh, that's a shame, man. As you see, I love all three. They really hit hard, man. Oh wait, I also realized. Sorry, Andrew, I missed your previous comment. Ralph Fiennes Devils looks kind of make him look like he came from the late 1800s. But how much more must he do to get an Oscar? Yeah, honestly, his performance in the Bone Temple was amazing. I loved his performance. I really liked that film. I think it's a shame it didn't do well at the box office, and in turn, kind of jeopardizes getting a third entry. But I'm going to be on the record and saying that even if we don't get a third, I loved that ending. So I'm good. Can't articulates in the chat. What's going on, man? I hope you're doing well. He says, "What's up, Chad?" That's me in the bottom right. Yes, yep. Because Letterboxd has it where you can see like the friends reviews and everything. But yes, that's you. That is Felix. I thought I liked Felix's review, but yeah, you can see a lot of them. I'm trying to think. Did anyone comment? No. But yeah, I love Mulholland Drive, man. After. Oh wait, sorry. There's one more comment. My bad. Can't articulate. Can't articulate says Mulholland Drive, GOAT level movie. Absolutely agree. I'm jealous, man, that you get to see that street from time to time. So after I did that little binge, I was in the mood to watch Trance, or rewatch, I should say, because I was, when I was in an elevated state, I'm like, all right, I want to watch something that's like really trippy. And then I was like, kind of in the mood to rewatch a Danny Boyle film. And then I was like, Trance. It's not that long, and I really liked that film. And yeah, this is a film that I've been meaning to review on my channel. I think that it really needs to get talked about much more. It's one of those films you'll hear people say it's style over substance. And, to that end, I'll say, isn't a director's style, isn't that the substance? I mean, if you have bland directing, then the story really is not going to unfold in an interesting way, is it not? So Danny Boyle, I mean, his style, it's so rejuvenating. It's so confident. And a film like this, it's mind-bending because of just how many twists and turns there are, and how it's a film where there's really no good and bad. It's very much so a line that's blurred right away. I mean, you're focusing on characters that are all arguably, morally great individuals that some you could say are more evil than others. But regardless, the way it's able to switch back and forth between different perspectives is something that I personally found to be very fascinating. I love the soundtrack. I think that the soundtrack doesn't get talked about enough. I really liked the cinematography. It's very vibrant, shot digitally, but it looks really good. Also, gonna say this: it has one of the best needle drops. I mean, the scene involving Rosario Dawson with James McAvoy. Again, I'm trying not to spoil it, but there's a scene involving those two. It's amazing. Again, if you haven't seen the film, I highly recommend you check it out. Again, it's only like 100 minutes long. It's so worth your time. It's really good. So I also just realized, I think that between wanting to watch a film that's very surreal, I also had just seen The Bone Temple, which I know wasn't directed by Danny Boyle, but it was a film that I couldn't help but think about 28 years later. And then I'm like, I kind of want to, do some rewatches of Danny Boyle's films. The 18th, I watched Prisoners, because what happened was I was helping a friend shoot a short film. When I was driving home, it was snowing, like quite a bit. I was like, am I about to die? Am I about to die? And to myself, I was like, you know what? If I die, I don't want to die, but, being able to say, oh, I was helping someone shoot a short film. I mean, that's the Chad way of going. Anyways, so on my way home, I was listening to the score for Prisoners, and I was like, you know what? Let me rewatch it. It's going to be method viewing. It's snowing. It's Prisoners. Why not? So I rewatched Prisoners. I loved it. It's one of my favorite films of all time. So it's amazing. It's a pretty accurate depiction of PA, I'll say as well. So take that with what you will. But it's amazing. So yeah, that I had down as method viewing. And yeah, Adam comments a lot, but it's his favorite. Next up, we have Hell's Hinges, which I guess I'll just say I really wasn't a big fan of this movie. That was one I decided to watch because it was in Babylon, but I ran out of time to watch that before Babylon, so I ended up watching it after. It's middle of the road. I didn't love it, didn't hate it. Then I watched Citizen Kane, which I'm sure many of you know. I rewatched it in preparation for the live stream with Sergey and Marv, and I finally gave it a 5 out of 5. I really didn't see anything wrong with it. I think it's one of the best films ever made. It's one of the most important, and I think it could also have helped that because I was watching so many films from the 1890s and 1900s that I was able to especially appreciate the pacing of Citizen Kane. Even though I would argue that Citizen Kane is a film that does feel very modern in its approach. Next up, I watched The Rip, which I'm just gonna say it. I thought The Rip was very forgettable. I really don't have much to say. It's the very definition of a movie of the week. Then I watched Still Walking. I thought this was solid. Need to watch more of that director. The Housemaid, you guys already know it. This is a movie I watched with Marv. I legit told him, I'm like, Marv, I'm gonna watch it at my local library on Blu-ray when it comes out. And he was like, no, you should watch it in theaters. And then I told him, I'm only going to watch The Housemaid in theaters if you are with me. He's like, all right, fair enough. So we saw it together in theaters, and I didn't hate it the way that I hated Another Simple Favor, but it's definitely a movie that's very flawed. But at the same time, I can see why it was a huge box office success. Will I see the sequel? I don't know. Honestly, with how it sets up the sequel, I think it's not going to be a good sequel, but we'll see how it turns out. But it's a movie that I'm glad I watched with Marv. Will I rewatch it? Probably not. But I'm glad that there are fans of it out there. Andrew says Prisoners is a really, really good film, but I'm not that crazy over it like most people are. Oh, that's a shame. I love Prisoners personally, but I could see why it might not necessarily be your favorite Villeneuve film because he's done so many great films. Andrew also says Citizen Kane still holds up spectacularly in today's world, in my opinion. 100%. I feel like if anything, it's served as a like a microscope into America in particular. And ironically enough, the president of the United States, that's his favorite movie. And if I mentioned this in the live stream, if you guys are aware of him talking about the movie, he definitely had a bad take on that movie. His wording was that the reason why, Charles Foster Kane faltered in the end was because of him choosing the wrong wife. And it's like, how media illiterate are you? I genuinely am asking. So it's very fascinating when you hear people that are in power and they just do not have good media literacy, in my opinion. Godzilla is in the chat. He says, "Hi, Chad. Didn't see you were on until now." Awesome, man. I'm glad that you're tuning in. Thanks for the likes on A Beautiful Mind, No Other Choice. Yeah, dude. Of course. I tried to keep up with people's letterboxes, but sometimes just because I'm following a couple hundred people, sometimes if I'm not daily checking, sometimes it just gets, unfortunately under the what's the phrase I'm looking for? Under the map, so to speak. But yeah, I rewatched A Beautiful Mind last night, and No Other Choice. I saw you liked it, and I was like, oh, I missed his review for that. But I'm glad that you liked both as well. After The Housemaid, Marv and I watched Mercy, and I will say this: Mercy will 100% make my top 10 worst of the year. I really did not like it. Avoid at all costs, please. It's literally Chris Pratt in a chair for 100 minutes with one of the most obvious plot twists you'll ever see. And for the record, thank God, Marv did not like it as well. The 25th, I watched The Revenant with my wife. It is one of her favorite films of all time, and it was at the same time snowing, so it was a method viewing. And I love The Revenant. I do think it's funny, though, because like a week later, it was announced that The Revenant was going to be coming out in IMAX for 2 days. So I will not be partaking because one of the days that it's going to be showing, I'll be in Philly seeing the Riverbend showing, and then the other day I think is the Showtime just won't align with anything. But The Revenant's amazing. I mean, that's a film that if you haven't seen it in an elevated state of mind, I would highly recommend you do so because it's quite a surreal film. As you see, it was a method viewing. My wife loved it, as she should. It's in her top 4 of all time. Next up, we have Collateral, which I also. Here's the funny thing, and I put this in my review. I rewatched in preparation for the live stream, but I didn't realize it was a method viewing because apparently Collateral takes place on January 25th. So it was an accidental method viewing. And I liked the film quite a bit, but I did mention to Marv that I thought it was a good film, but it was not a good candy film. Like when I was watching, I'm like, this is good, but I really didn't need to watch it this way. So I kind of wish I watched it a different day and just chose another movie that probably would have been better in an elevated state. But thankfully, I rewatched The Shining, and rewatching The Shining that way was amazing. This was another method viewing experience because it's very snowy in terms of being snow based, and it was snowy outside. And I mean, The Shining is in my top 25. I think it's a fantastic film. It's one of my favorite horror films, one of my favorite Kubrick films, and it's scary, man. It's a terrifying film, and just an amazing depiction of descent into madness, and just the film is so immersive. So, loved The Shining. My bad, guys. I accidentally logged out. 1 second. I got to pull up the screen again for The Shining. All right, there we go. So, I'm back. Let me go to some of the comments. Let's see. Godzilla says, I like to know other choice in Saw. You really loved it. Yes, I loved it as well. Godzilla, did you watch Beautiful Mind on 4K? Just came out on 4K. If you did, how'd you think it looked? I thought it looked really, really good on 4K. I bought that on 4K and then All the President's Men, which when I'm done this live stream, I will be watching All the President's Men on 4K, which I'm so excited, man, because for a little bit of context, I did a video of top 10 films that I want to see come out on 4K UHD. And my number 1 was All the President's Men. So the fact that it's coming out in 4K, or it came out in 4K, I should say, is just amazing. So I'm excited to rewatch that. But yeah, Beautiful Mind looked and sounded great. The Dolby Atmos track surprisingly has some heft, I think, because of James Horner's score. But yeah, it's worth an upgrade. Andrew says, I think the Orange Man only likes Citizen Kane for that one party scene with all the go-go girls. Yeah, you're probably right. Even though, like, when I watched the movie, I can't help but think that, oh, yeah, this is kind of like his life because he went from, his childhood was pretty much taken away from him. He went straight into business at such a young age. So, like, and you see that with how he interacts with children. It's like he doesn't know how to act. Now, of course, if we're talking about Epstein Island, that's something else totally different. But if you've seen him, like, hand out candy, it's like he's never done it before. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? Is this your first time on Earth? Can't articulate a Beautiful Mind was great. I agree. It's such a good experience. Andrew says, I saw Mercy's nauseating, horrendous trailer, so I skipped it. You, sir, did yourself a service. I would not recommend watching it unless you are like myself and are a reviewer and need to do a top 10 worst of the year. That's the only reason. Other than that, avoid it at all costs. Andrew says, The Revenant and The Shining are great wintertime movies. That Shining references Zootopia 2 absolutely killed me. Oh, yeah, me too. I was not expecting Zootopia 2 to have as many film references as it did. So I was gleeful in theaters when I saw that Zootopia 2 referenced The Shining and, like, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Good references. Good references. After The Shining, I watched Thief. And I will say, in terms of Michael Mann movies watching in an elevated state, Thief was much better. Thief is a film that if you are a big fan of Drive, which came out in 2011, I would highly recommend you check out Thief because that film greatly inspired Drive. And I feel like this is one of the first films that I would argue paved the way for neon noir, which is a subgenre in itself. Some neon noir films I can reference would be, I would say, Collateral would be one of them. Miami Vice, both the show and then of course the movie. Spring Breakers is also a neon noir film. So films like those. So again, I would definitely recommend Thief. I think it looks really good on Blu-ray. It did get a 4K transfer recently, so if you do end up liking it, I would just pick up the 4K. But the Blu-ray looks really good too. It also has a Tangerine Dream score, and it's really good. Next up, I watched To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Some of you might be like, why did he watch this movie? I watched it because it was on, I think it was Letterboxd's top 250 most fans. So I watched it because of that. And I can see why this movie has a lot of fans, but unfortunately I'm not one of them. It just, I don't know, to me it just felt very predictable and just very okay. But again, I can see why it has fans, but I'm not a big fan. Next, I watched Brief Encounter, which this is on Letterboxd's top 250, and I thought it was very interesting watching a David Lean film that was shorter than 2.5 hours. I liked this movie. I liked it quite a bit. When it ended, I said to myself, I could see this being a film that on rewatch I get even more out of it. As a first time watch, I liked it, but didn't love it. Then later on that day, I kept seeing on my what's it called? My algorithm. I kept seeing clips from the short film Corey's, and I'm like, this seems like my type of film. It seems very trippy and surreal, and it is a very trippy and surreal short film. So if you have my style of humor that I like and filmmaking, I would highly recommend you check out the Corey's. If you want complete coherence, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Corey's, but it's a short film that I would recommend, and it's on YouTube for free. 27th, I watched Flushed Away, which again might seem odd, but I decided to watch it because it's one of the few Aardman films that I hadn't seen before. But what's interesting about this one is that it's not 100% claymation. Like a lot of it is digital animation, and that's because of the water sequences. Obviously, it's in the title, Flushed Away, but I don't know, man. I thought that this was a movie that as it went along, I felt like it lost a lot of steam. But I can see why children in particular might like this, but it's not one of the finest hours of Aardman pictures. But I didn't hate it per se, but I wasn't a big fan. 27th, later on that day, I rewatched Manchester by the Sea with my wife. This is another one of her 4 favorite films. And, on rewatch, we both loved it. I think Manchester by the Sea is fantastic. Turns 10 this year, so it gives some of you a really good excuse to finally watch it if you haven't. If you have seen it, well, this gives you a reason to rewatch it. 28th, I watched Autumn Sonata, which I will just say right away, I like this film quite a bit. It's an Ingmar Bergman film. I watched 2 reasons. One, it's an Ingmar Bergman film, and then the second reason being that this was also on Letterboxd's top 250. I'm just going to say this. My goal is to try to watch 3 to 5 films from Letterboxd's top 250 each month. My end goal is to try to watch all top 250. I know that's going to change all the time, but I still want to try to because the list is very versatile, and there's films from all different places in the world. So it's a film that will make me even more versatile as a reviewer, whilst at the same time, just honestly an audience member in general. So, so you'll notice that on my feed for sure. And then let me go down one. So on the 29th of January, I watched It Ends With Us. And It Ends With Us. It's very famous because of course, the controversy involving the director and the lead star, and how basically it wasn't exactly a safe workspace. So I'm going to say this right away. I don't have a side. It's one of those things where I need to have more information, but I do think it's very fascinating because I feel like there's more drama in the actual court case and everything than the actual movie. Like when you watch the movie itself, you're like, I am shocked that this is the movie that really cause as much drama as it did, because it's a movie that on paper it's dealing with themes that are very important, but in execution it's handled very poorly. I really did not like the movie. I'll just say that right away. I was not a fan of it. I thought it was way too long. I also just thought that the chemistry was very awkward at best. The dialogue, just it's not a well written movie. It's not well directed. And again, if I was looking at this from viewing just the movie itself, which I always try to, I'm like, Blake Lively, you're really not doing a good job acting this movie. And I'm like, Justin Baldoni, you're really not doing a good job directing and acting this movie. So I'm left off the side saying, what the heck's going on here? Yeah, not a fan of it. I, again, I would say watch it maybe if you're curious. Other than that, just avoid. I also watched Me Before You, which is another one you might be saying to yourself, why did Chad watch this? I watched it because, for one, it's a movie that I have been kind of curious about over the last decade watching it. But I finally decided to watch it because it was on Letterboxd's top 250 most fans. So I watched it, and it's middle of the road. It's Amelia Clark's good in it, but it's a very manipulative movie. And I know one could argue that film as an art form is manipulative, and it's like, yeah, that is true. It's combining imagery and sound to create feelings. But in this regards, with what this movie's doing, it just doesn't feel earned, unfortunately. It's a very safe movie, but I can see why it has fans. Let's see. Andrew says, first time seeing Manchester by the Sea was so slow, I turned it off. Oh, geez. But I pushed through the whole thing the second time for its Best Picture nominee status. Well, I'm glad you gave it a second chance. I was surprised you thought it was so slow. I thought it was very... I've always thought it was a very absorbing film. I think mostly because of the mystery. I'm like, what happened to this guy's life? Because you're cutting back and forth to his present day life and his past, and you're like, how did he change so much? And then, of course, the middle of the film reveals what happened. You're like, oh, okay, I see why that is. So, man, I love that movie. Can't Articulate, Me Before You, 2.5, one of my faves. Yeah, man, I'm sorry. I wanted to like it. I really did. But, yeah, it's just not a big fan, unfortunately. Andrew says, a very powerful, emotional film that I'd never watch again. Too sad. Oh, that's a shame. Yeah, my wife and I, we rewatch that like once every couple of years. I love that movie. 2016 had a killer lineup for Best Picture. Yeah, we're almost done with January, guys. We have, let's see. Oh, yeah. January 31st, I watched a lot. So we'll talk about Marty Supreme next. I watched Marty Supreme with my wife. We saw it in IMAX. She liked it. Didn't love it as much as me, but my rating went up even more for Marty Supreme. I think it's a fantastic film. My number 2 of the year. Loved it. Timothée Chalamet gave an incredible performance. Just truly fantastic. Full disclosure, January 31st, I was sick. I felt sick, but thankfully that day I was watching these movies in an elevated state of mind. And I'll say this, it definitely helped me out. Like, I was definitely able to, pull through it. But then the next day when I wasn't in an elevated state, that's when I felt even more sick. So just throwing this out there, if you're feeling sick, watching an elevated state is definitely better. But I watched Zechariah because I heard it was a film to watch in an elevated state. And I thought that certain moments were good that way, specifically the opening scene. But as a whole, I thought it was okay. But I definitely liked the, certain moments that are quite surreal. Then I watched Pink Floyd The Wall, which I thought was solid. I should rewatch at some point, but I thought it was solid. Then I watched Yellow Submarine, and I will just say this right now. I'm going to show a picture of it, actually. Look at this. This movie is G-rated, and it is one of the most trippy, surreal films that I have ever seen. And I think I even said in my review, I literally said it. Like, it's like, this is one of those films that I would show my children so that way they can see dreamlike logic, because it's a film that definitely follows that. And I can almost promise that David Lynch was a fan of this film. I feel like a lot of filmmakers that delve into dreamlike logic filmmaking would be able to say the same. But it's such a creative film, man. Like it it's really good. I'll probably pick it up on Blu-ray because man, it's such a good film. But yeah, I watched that. Did I watch anything else that day? Oh yeah. Actually, I watched a couple. Looks like I watched 1 second. I watched West Side Story. And West Side Story, this was a movie that I also put down as a trippy psychedelic musical movie night. I think that this film gets better and better. And I'm just going to say this right away. This film, I think everyone should watch, even if you don't like musicals, because it's so relevant, especially in America. We unfortunately see this all the time. I think it's one of the reasons why the Romeo and Juliet archetype is something that unfortunately has been relevant for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I think West Side Story, this version in particular, does such a great job. I mean, you see Spielberg's signature style. He does a really good job directing it. Again, I think it gets better with each viewing, and I absolutely love the filmmaking on display. But yeah, I gave it 4.25. Yeah, 4.25. Really liked it. Also, we got to talk about the costume design. Like, look at these costumes. I know it was nominated. I forget what won, but I was shocked that it did win. Next up, I watched Moulin Rouge, and I gotta say, Moulin Rouge. I mean, I say it right here. Like, it rules. Like, especially watching it this way, it feels like a religious experience. It's a film that is insane. It is incredibly insane. It's unlike it's like unlike any film that you'll watch. I promise you that. But at the same time, it still manages to, similar to West Side Story, it does take from Romeo and Juliet, that formula, but because of Baz Luhrmann's directing, because of the editing style, because of the way that it's paced, it does feel very fresh. And it's also a very colorful film. And watching it 25 years later, which I just now realized this is another film that was nominated for Best Picture in 2001, turns 25. It's a film that holds up really well. It's not going to be a film for necessarily everyone, but if you want to watch a movie in an elevated state, this is one of the best, in my personal opinion. It's a really good film. It gets better with each viewing. Guys, I am so sorry. I was talking for the last couple minutes and I realized I didn't add myself to the stage. Say you're a boomer with technology without saying you're a boomer with technology. So what I was saying is I accidentally clicked out of the wrong tab again because I'm going in between tabs and I'm like refreshing it, and I accidentally refreshed the StreamYard one instead of the Letterboxd one. So that's my bad. What I was saying is that before I get to the last thing I watched on the 31st, let me address the comments. Can Articulate says Marty Supreme, my favorite from 2025. Very great directing. I can definitely see why it's your favorite from 2025. It was my number two. The directing is fantastic. I'm very much so glad he got nominated for Best Directing. Andrew says, loved Marty Supreme so much. My favorite review on Letterboxd for it. Never get in the way of a white boy determined to go to Japan. It's pretty good. Andrew, West Side Story has so many good musical numbers to be bobbing along with it. America is the best song of all time about immigration. It is a really good song. Like, that moment is fantastic. Haven't seen Moulin Rouge though. Moulin Rouge it's an insane experience. Like, I've never done crack cocaine, But if someone were to tell me that the editor of Moulin Rouge was on crack cocaine when they were editing it, I would say, yeah, that checks out. That makes sense. So it's an insane film. I mean, if you've seen Baz Luhrmann's work, you'll kind of have an idea of what to expect with this film. But I'll say this: I think that even though The Great Gatsby and Elvis are similar to Moulin Rouge, I do think that Moulin Rouge is the one that is the most unhinged. So if you've seen Elvis, if you've seen Great Gatsby, you'll have an idea. But yeah. So I watched Corey's to end January 31st. I watched Corey's, and I liked it. I really, really liked it. I think Corey's is a really good time, a really good short film. Would highly recommend it. Again, it was a rewatch, but I watched in an elevated state. And yeah, I really, really liked this film. So I would highly recommend you check this out. Just honestly, West Side Story, Moulin Rouge, and Corey's, do yourself a favor, check them out. Yellow Submarine as well. But all right. Yeah, so that's everything I watched in January, guys. February, I will go over. February is almost done, so I will be going over that pretty soon. So stay tuned for that. And, of course, we'll interact on Letterboxd. But before we end the live stream, we do have a couple comments. Andrew says, yeah, not that big of a fan for Baz Luhrmann's maximalist style. I get that. Not everyone is. Yeah, I feel like he's very hit or miss for people. And for the longest time, he was a miss for me. But Moulin Rouge was what always kind of made me cling on to some hope. Again, not the biggest fan of Elvis. Great Gatsby, I did rewatch it recently, and I will say third time's a charm is true, because when I watched it a third time, I definitely liked it more, but I'm still not a big fan. I feel like Moulin Rouge is the one where I use as like a guide of like, okay, I'm not a big fan of all of his work, but this is a film that I am a big fan of. Again, it has that like Requiem for a Dream editing style, but done in a fun way, if that makes sense. But yeah, guys. So I'm gonna try to do this every month, where I talk about the movies that I watched, either the previous month or that month. So stay tuned for that. Tonight I'll probably be rewatching All the President's Men, and then I'll also be watching what's it called, Age of Shadows, because that director I'm trying to watch all of their films, so that way I can rank them on my YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, I will be rewatching Riverbend in theaters on Thursday. So I'm excited about that. And then some of the other films I'm watching, but you'll see on Letterboxd. But anyways, I appreciate you guys for watching. Stay tuned for future videos. And yeah, I will catch you guys later.